It's every entrepreneur's hope that the business endeavors they undertake will be successful. No one likes being a failure, and business people especially like to succeed and make money off their plans. While some entrepreneurs strike a chord with their customer base and get lucky, others seem to have the ability to make lightning strike twice, or even more often, and come up with multiple business ideas. Often these businesses are complementary and make sense, but sometimes an entrepreneur will come up with businesses that are remarkably dissimilar, such that you'd never guess the person was behind each one. Number 10. The founder of Atari also founded Chuck E. Cheese. Nolan Bushnell is clearly a guy who likes fun, which seems to be the only common thread linking his two greatest business achievements. In 1972, Bushnell co-founded what could be considered the grandfather of the modern gaming world, Atari. Long before anyone had a PlayStation, an Xbox, or even a Nintendo in their homes, they had an Atari 2600 and were playing extremely simple games like Asteroids and Pong. While introducing the concept of home console gaming seems like it should have been enough to keep anyone set for the rest of their lives, that was a long time ago in the industry. Was a lot different. So Bushnell had to keep working, and his next big idea was something of a left turn. He was also the force behind Chuck E. Cheese, which he developed at Atari. Corporate overlords being what they are, the money men were not amused that Bushnell was making singing robots and otherwise wasting time and resources. He was actually kicked out of the company in 1978. Though he never made as big a splash again with his later work, his contributions to pop culture are certainly legendary and, well, a bit weird. Number 9. Lee Byung-chul founded Samsung but started out running a dry goods company. Samsung's 2021 revenue was around $244 billion. They're clearly one of the biggest electronics companies in the world, and they make everything from phones to washing machines. This diverse approach is ingrained in the company, as their origins are even more wide-reaching thanks to their founder, Lee Byung-chul, and his dedication to selling pretty much anything. That multi-billion-dollar empire started with $25 back in 1938 when the founder opened a dry goods store to sell things like dried fish and other food. The company sold goods from and around the city of Daegu and had about 40 employees. Because they sold dried food, the company did well during the Korean War in 1950 and branched out. They moved into sugar and then textiles. That worked too, so they expanded into insurance, retail, and by the 1960s they were manufacturing electronics. They go on to manufacture ships, telecommunications, and pretty much anything else you can think of. The family still runs Samsung today, and the company is obviously most well known for its cell phones and electronics, but the company likely wouldn't exist at all without dried fish and noodles nearly a century ago. Number 8. The founder of Domino's also founded a law school. We already saw the founder of Chuck E. Cheese was behind Atari, and it turns out pizza guys have a lot of diverse interests. Tom Monahan, the man behind Domino's, also started his own law school. He invested $50 million of his own cash in the school back in the late 1990s. The school's mission? To educate lawyers with a Roman Catholic perspective. Monahan actually divested himself of the pizza chain to devote himself to Catholic causes. He sold Domino's for $1 billion, so he certainly had the resources to follow his dreams. And the school really was built and still exists today. It's been sanctioned in the past for having low entrance standards and is considered one of the most conservative law schools in the country. Number 7. The inventor of the lava lamp founded a nudist resort. Did you ever have a lava lamp growing up? Or, maybe right now? They are very symbolic in most people's minds of hippie counterculture in the 60s and 70s, although they also enjoyed a retro resurgence once or twice since those times. Lava lamps were invented in 1963 by British accountant Edward Craven Walker. Walker was known for only one other thing in his life, and that was his penchant for nudity. The man made underwater nude films. Prior to inventing the lamp, Walker had made movies with names like Eve on Skis, which featured naked people doing things naked. One movie was presented as an underwater ballet. Water and nudity really seemed to move him, so much so that after achieving some success with his movies, he bought an entire club and founded his own nudist resort. He then tried to ban anyone from showing up if they were overweight. Number 6. The co-founder of Paul Mitchell also founded Patron Tequila. Paul Mitchell, more correctly known as John Paul Mitchell Systems, is a haircare company dating back to 1980 with an annual revenue of about $1 billion. It's safe to say Paul Mitchell is doing all right. The company was founded by two men, Paul Mitchell himself and John Paul DeGiorgia. Mitchell passed away from cancer in 1989, and DeGiorgia continued to run the company from then on, but he also managed to diversify his portfolio. In addition to the world of hairspray and brushes, DeGiorgia is also the man behind Patron Tequila, the third best-selling tequila in America. That works out to over 3 million cases sold in 2021 alone. Of course, DeGiorgia doesn't need to worry about that anymore since he sold the company in 2018 for over $5 billion. Number 5. Arad invented the Skip It and later was behind Marvel Studios. Before Kevin Feige was the man behind the curtain at Marvel creating the MCU and more or less printing money for the Walt Disney Corporation, there was another man who put Marvel up on the big screen, and that was Avi Arad. He was the producer behind most of those non-MCU films from the 90s and early 2000s like X-Men, Blade, Daredevil, Punisher, and so on. Before Arad was giving us the joy of Nick Cage's Ghost Rider, he worked in toys. Specifically, he worked for a company called Tiger Toys and was the inventor of one of the most popular toys in history, the Skip-It. That was a little hoop you hooked around your ankle, attached to a ball on a string that you'd spin around, forcing you to skip it, hence the name, with your other foot. Arad, along with two others, filed a patent for their version of it in 1990. It was hugely successful, and so was Arad. For a time, the man was considered basically the biggest toy designer in America. Then some of his biggest toys were based on comic books. He was already executive producer of cartoons like the X-Men, and stated his goal was to exploit the Marvel Universe characters in toys, shows, and films. And that's how he ended up kicking off the world of Marvel movies. Arguably, the MCU would not exist today without Arad and the Skip-It. Number 4. The founder of Wikipedia ran a porn site first. Wikipedia is so ubiquitous on the internet these days, it's essentially just where everyone thinks of when they need to know literally anything that they don't already know. It's one of the top 10 most visited sites on the internet, and it has been for ages. Just a random sampling shows that in November of 2021 alone, site traffic reached 5.97 billion, making it the 4th most visited site online after Google, YouTube, and Facebook. Despite not generally being accepted as a real source for info, it's a great starting point if nothing else, and according to Wikipedia itself, it has published over 57 million pages of information. The site was founded by Jimmy Wales back in 2001, but before that he started a site known as Bomis, which featured things like the Bomis Babe Report, which featured galleries of half-naked women, the Babe Engine, which was a search engine for sexy women, and of course Bomis Premium, which was $2.95 a month and gave you access to X-rated content. It was the money that Wales made from Bomis that allowed him to start Wikipedia, and in fact Wikipedia was borrowing bandwidth from Bomis for years in order to stay active. He made money from Bovis, and that paid to keep the servers online. So while Wikipedia may be a hub of knowledge today, it's built in a foundation of softcore porn with a dash of hardcore on the side. Number 3. The founder of Toho also founded a railway. Long before Godzilla was a multi-million-dollar blockbuster franchise in America, it was a multi-million-dollar blockbuster franchise in Japan, but with less savvy special effects. Everyone knows the classic man-in-a-suit Godzilla, and the Toho company still makes Godzilla movies the same way. Toho was founded by Ichizo Kobayashi in 1932 as the Tokyo Takarazuka Theatre Co. Kobayashi was a man who dabbled in just about everything, and years before his company would create everyone's favorite radioactive lizard, he was doing things like starting railroad companies and department stores. It was the railroad that inadvertently led to Godzilla, as Kobayashi wanted more customers on his train, so he devised a theatre troupe to entertain people. The train theatre evolved to normal theatre, and then that later turned into a film. Later his company would not just create Godzilla, but Akira Kurosawa's legendary The Seven Samurai as well. Number 2. Donald Duncan made a fortune in yo-yos and parking meters. Donald Duncan counts as a serious threat to the wallet because this man was all over the map with his business dealings and had success on multiple disparate fronts. While he was once a franchise owner of a Good Humor ice cream, it's not true that he invented the Eskimo pie as some sources claim. That aside, he did make a name in yo-yos and parking meters. In 1946, Duncan Yo-Yos was making 3,600 yo-yos per hour. They sold 45 million in 1962. And when Duncan wasn't keeping kids busy with a simple hobby, he was annoying their parents with parking fees. The Duncan Parking Meter Company was an idea he came up with years earlier, and he managed to convince cities it would be a good way to make money. Though he sold the company in 1959, when he was in charge, 80% of all parking meters in America were made by Duncan. Number 1. Gavin McInnes founded Vice Media and the Proud Boys. McInnes founded Vice magazine in 1994, which grew into Vice Media, which is still very much a media company today. The magazine was a sort of counterculture Canadian news magazine that was very much focused on the punk scene, or at least it filtered news through a sort of punk perspective. Vice Media is maybe best known in the mainstream for its documentary-style videos that were aired on HBO and covered a variety of topics. In more recent years, Vice Media has had to go on record to state they're no longer affiliated with McInnes because his other claim to fame is that he founded the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys are described as a neo-fascist white nationalist organization by Encyclopedia Britannica and an extremist group with a violent agenda by the Anti-Defamation League.